I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life.
Presentar armas, ya. Firmes, ya. Posición 1, ya.
He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him.
Ven todo este dinero que tengo aquí. Yo no lo gané robando ni siendo narco. No siendo narco, sí.
Imagine you're a kid growing up in the shadows of the drug trade. Everywhere you look, the cartels flash their money and their power. It's like a siren song, and it's luring you in with promises of respect, wealth, and a way out of your daily struggles. Before you know it, you've got a gun in your hand and blood on your name. This is the story of Mexico's cartel hitmen, the sicarios, guys who traded their souls for a taste of the fast life, only to find out that in this game, the only way out is in a body bag. In this video, we're going to take a hard look at the lives and deaths of some of the most notorious killers in the cartel world. We'll see how they got seduced by the lifestyle, the brutal stuff they did, and how it all caught up to them in the end. But we're not just here to gawk at the violence. We're here to understand, to see how poverty, broken families, and a lack of options can twist a kid into a monster, and to hear from the select few reformed guys who miraculously made it out alive and what they can teach us. So buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride, but an important one, because maybe, just maybe, if we understand how these stories go so wrong, we can start writing a different ending for the next generation. Raul Meza Torres, aka El Mini 6. First up, let's talk about Raul Meza Torres, aka El Mini 6. This man was practically born with a gun in his hand. His dad, Raul Meza Ontiveros, was a big shot in the Sinaloa cartel, the right-hand man of Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Young Raul grows up thinking the narco life is normal. Designer clothes, flashy cars, and punishing his rivals were the norm for him. By the time he hits 15, Raul's already a rising star in the cartel. They call him El Mini 6, a nod to his dad's nickname, LM6. But let's get one thing clear. This kid earned his reputation all on his own. He was particularly known for being completely cold-blooded and ready to smoke anyone on command. Now, you might be thinking, 15? That's barely a teenager. But in the cartel world, age is really just a number. That's the thing with cartels. They love recruiting kids. Why? Because they're incredibly easy to manipulate, hungry for respect, and don't think twice about pulling the trigger in order to impress their bosses. They don't think about consequences like a grown man would.
It's a job for kids who have the street in their blood, who've grown up with violence.
Presentar armas, ya. Firmes, ya. Posición 1, ya.
How old is the little dude over there? 13. That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
Pues está pequeño, pero entre más pequeño más aprende y le gusta.
So Raul gets thrown into this dark and twisted world as a young kid, and he's doing it all. Torture, cutting people up, you name it. And the more ruthless he is, the more respect he gets in return. That's the sad reality of these institutions of death. But here's the thing about living by the strap. Sooner or later, karma comes knocking. And for Raul, it all goes down on the fateful day of April 29th, 2010. Him and his friend, Sinaloa hitman Fidel Rojas Felix, get cornered by the authorities in the city of Zapopan. But Raul and his friend aren't the type to just surrender. A shootout ensues, and Raul takes down one officer and leaves another badly wounded. But in the end, the bullets find him too. Just like that, El Mini 6 is gone, 18 years old, and his life is over before it even got started. And you know what's even worse? Raul's story isn't even unique. There's kids like him getting chewed up and spit out by the cartels every single day. For many of these hitmen, the path to violence starts early. Just listen to what an ex-sicario from Culiacan has to say.
I started, behaving bad when I was in elementary school because my grandmother and my aunt, which is my dad's sister, they basically, I want to say, messed up my head, and I started doing time when I was 11 years old. Got arrested for residential burglary. Well, I broke into my elementary school. From there on, basically, I would do I want to say like 4 months, 5 months, and then I'll get out, and I won't even be out for like 2 weeks.
With broken homes, absent parents, and a lack of stability, kids like this are easy prey for the cartels. They're drawn in with promises of belonging, of respect, of fast money, and that's a story that just keeps on repeating.
I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing, and I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody. He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him. And he said he was putting me on his payroll.
But once they're in, even if they don't know it yet, their fate is sealed, and they find themselves on a one-way path to destruction.
Nos dijo, bueno, ya están aquí. El que se quiere ir, que se vaya ahorita. Y cortó con la pistola. Aquí la única forma que te vayas es por las patas por delante.
No one's really born a hitman, after all. But in a world where the cartels are king, it's a short walk from the cradle to the grave. And once you're in, there's only one way out, and it's exactly what happened to Raul Meza Torres, Manuel Torres Felix, aka El Ondeado. Next up, we got Manuel Torres Felix, alias El Ondeado. This man was a complete nightmare. You see, El Ondeado wasn't content with just getting rid of his many rivals. In fact, he liked to send a message while he was at it too. And his calling card? Leaving bodies in pieces for everyone to behold. He would snatch enemies on behalf of the Sinaloa cartel, then take them out to some remote house in the woods, and then, well, let's just say he earned his nickname, the Butcher. He'd chop these poor victims to bits, and then leave their bodies scattered like some kind of sick puzzle. The most twisted part? This wasn't just about offing the competition. This was a terror tactic, plain and simple. El Ondeado wanted everyone, rivals, civilians, as well as law enforcement agents, to know what happened when you messed with the Sinaloa cartel. He wanted people to be so scared that they wouldn't even think of stepping out of line. And for a minute, it worked. El Ondeado made the name Sinaloa synonymous with brutality. The stories of his work spread like wildfire and turned him into a kind of urban legend. Folks would whisper his name as if he were the boogeyman himself, but you know what they say about living by the sword. In the end, it was El Ondeado's own savagery that did him in. The government could only turn a blind eye for so long, and when the stories of the mangled bodies got too loud to ignore, they had to make a move. And that's exactly why El Ondeado's reign of terror came to an abrupt end. 2012. The Mexican army, this massive OP, all in the name of taking down this one Sinaloa hitman. And when they finally managed to catch up to him, the Butcher finally got a taste of his own medicine. But let's step back for a second and examine the larger picture. Sure, for men just like El Ondeado, this kind of ending is almost inevitable. After all, you can't unleash that kind of hell without expecting it to come right back on you.
If you're a drug dealer and they catch you, you know, it's down there, like, it actually, you know, they beat you up, like, oh man, like, they told you down there just to make you talk.
But the real tragedy? It's not just the lives El Ondeado took. It's all the kids who grew up in a world where monsters like him were real. Can you imagine what that does to a young child's mind? To know that there are people out there capable of that kind of evil? In the end, El Ondeado's legacy isn't just a trail of hacked up bodies. It's a whole generation scarred by the violence he unleashed. And that's a wound that doesn't heal easily. It's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, even years later, wondering how people can be so cruel.
They are young men just like me. We look normal, but we're sick in the head. I see myself as a good guy, but if you mess with me, I'll f you up. I'll kill you.
For the kids growing up in Sinaloa today, El Ondeado's name is still spoken in hushed tones. He's become a kind of cautionary tale, a reminder of how far a man can fall when he lets the darkness in. But for every kid scared straight, there's another one seduced by the myth, wanting to be the next legend of the underworld.
They do it for sport. They have nothing else to do. I mean, they need excitement in their life, and that's how they get it.
Ven todo este dinero que tengo aquí. Yo no lo gané robando ni siendo narco. No, siendo narco sí.
And that's the real horror of the cartel life. It's not just the lives it takes, but the way it warps minds, generation after generation. It's a sickness that infects whole communities, leaving scars that may never fully heal. But as we'll see in the stories to come, even in the darkest places, there's always a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption, for a new start. It's not easy, and it sure isn't pretty, but it's there for those with the courage to reach for it. Claudius Ochoa Felix, aka El Chino Antrax. Alright, so we've talked about the old school sicarios, but the game is always changing, and with the rise of social media, we got a new breed of hitmen, the ones who do it all for likes just as much as they do it for cash. Enter Claudius Ochoa Felix, known on the streets as El Chino Antrax. Some of you might know him as the OG Instagram sicario, and rightly so. He'd post pics of his iced-out guns, his exotic pets, and his extremely lavish vacations. It was like he was trying to be the cartel version of Dan Bilzerian, but don't get it twisted. El Chino wasn't just some guy with an iPhone. He was a high-ranking hitman for the Sinaloa cartel, part of a crew called Los Antrax. They were the cartel's elite squad, trained sicarios, who were even more violent than your average cartel hitman. And El Chino reveled in his brutal reputation too. For him, violence was a way to get famous. He wanted people to shiver from just hearing his name, and social media was the perfect tool for that. Every post was a way to say, "Look at me, I'm untouchable." But here's the thing about the internet, it's forever. Every pic El Chino posted, every boast he made, it was all evidence in the end. And when law enforcement started closing in, they used that digital trail to build a case that would make even the best lawyers sweat. So in 2013, El Chino was captured in the Netherlands. The DEA had tipped off the Dutch authorities, and they were waiting for him right as he arrived at the airport. Turns out, no matter how many followers you have, you can't escape an international warrant. Now locked up, El Chino tries to play it cool at first, but when the reality of life in an American prison started sinking in, he flipped and started singing like a canary, spilling cartel secrets left and right. And unsurprisingly, that was a bad move. In the cartel world, snitching is the gravest sin, after all. And when word got out that El Chino was cooperating with the authorities, his fate was pretty much sealed. After a few years spent locked up, El Chino got out, thinking he could just disappear into witness protection. But the cartel, they've never forgive and they never forget. In 2020, El Chino slipped back into Mexico, probably thinking the heat had died down. And he couldn't have been more wrong. Within days, his body is found, chopped to bits, the cartel's signature send-off for a snitch. The craziest part? Even in the end, El Chino was still performing for the cameras. The pics of his lifeless body went viral on Mexican social media. It's like the ultimate dark joke, the Instagram hitman, getting his final 15 minutes of fame. But there's a lesson here, and it's a grim one. In the age of social media, even the most savage hitmen can start to believe their own hype. They can start thinking they're invincible, that the normal rules just don't apply to them. But real life doesn't care about your follower count. In the end, the streets always win. And for El Chino, the very fame he craved is what set him up for his fall. Or, as one ex-sicario puts it, your ego is what eventually gets you.
You have to understand that you can't take anything personal. It's only a job, you know. It's only business, and the moment that you do take it personal, everything goes south. There's definitely there's honor in it. I think that's the only way that you survive, you know. That's the only way that karma doesn't hit you in your back, is by having honor, obviously.
So next time you see some narco boaster flaunting his lifestyle online, remember El Chino. Remember how his story ended, not with fame and fortune, but with his blood soaking into the dirt of some nameless ditch. In the end, that's the only fame the sicario life can promise. A fleeting moment of notoriety, followed by a brutal, anonymous demise. But it's a price that far too many young men are still willing to pay. Throughout all these tales, there's one question that keeps coming up. What does it do to a man to live a life of violence? What's the cost of being a cartel hitman, not just on your body, but on your very soul? For the sicarios who don't make it out, who meet their end in a hail of gunfire or at the end of a blade, maybe that's a question without an answer. But for the rare few who survive, who somehow claw their way out of that life, the scars aren't just physical. Take El Gordo, for instance. He was deep in the cartel game, smuggling drugs, and even carrying out hits, just like everyone else on this list. But even for a hardened sicario, the violence eventually takes its toll.
To be honest, like, I felt a little bit of fear, but at the same time, you know, like, it was either, I was either just gonna be scared and die, or just man up and just, you know, just fight and survive. And,
And it's not just the fear of catching a bullet, it's the weight of the things you've done, the faces of the people you've sent to the grave. They haunt you. Another former hitman called Ali Gonzalez says can't even count how many souls he's seen being taken.
1 month you get probably like 60, 70 people killed in 1 month. In a week you can get 20, 30 people killed.
It's like he's talking about the weather, but each one of those casualties leave a mark.
Obviously, there is sometimes that I think about a lot of things every day.
And then there's the isolation. To be a hitman, you have to cut yourself off from anything that could make you soft. Family, friends, love, all that has to get left behind.
In my case, had no family. Try to avoid being even close to anybody that you had any feelings towards, because it could have they could use that as leverage.
I mean, it sounds harrowing, but it also sounds like quite a lonely existence, I guess.
It is. It is.
But us humans, we just aren't built for that kind of loneliness. It warps you, turns you cold and callous. And if you're lucky enough to be able to walk away from this life, you realize you don't know how to be a real person anymore. You've forgotten how to trust or how to even care. And that's the real price of being a sicario, but the cold certainty of losing yourself, piece by piece, hit by hit, until there's nothing left but a shell of a man, haunted by his own deeds. And for what? For cash that you can't enjoy because you're always looking over your shoulder? For a reputation that's built on fear and not on respect? It's a sobering thought, but one that bears repeating, because in a world where the cartels peddle false dreams of money and power, it's all too easy to get caught up in the hype, to start believing that the ends justify the means, that your humanity is a fair price to pay.
So I started questioning everything, you know? Started questioning who I was and why I was there. And if what I was doing had any honor, you know, if it was worth dying for.
But the truth is, there's no coming back from that kind of darkness. Once you cross that line, once you trade your conscience for a trigger, you're lost. Even if you make it out alive, a part of you will always remain in those blood-soaked streets.
Mentally, I was preparing myself to obviously get murdered, you know, end my life in combat. But like I said, I started questioning everything because of the level of stupidity of other lieutenants and knowing how the game works, you know.
So if there's one thing we can take from these stories, it's this. The sicario life is a lie. It lures you in with promises of riches and respect, then leaves you broken and empty inside. But as grim as these stories are, there's a lesson in them, a warning. The path of the sicario is a one-way trip. It doesn't matter how tough you are, how smart you are. In the end, the game always wins. The real tragedy, though? Most of these guys never really had a choice. They were born into poverty, into a world where the cartel was the only way to get ahead. They were seduced by the promise of wealth, power, of respect. But that promise was a lie.
You're just a pawn for the real people that are making money. They're not gonna worry for you. They're not loyal to you. You're just something that can be replaced by something else.
In the end, the truth is, there's no respect to be found in the barrel of a gun. No amount of blood can wash away the stain on your spirit, and all the money in the world can't buy back the pieces of yourself you lost along the way in the journey of becoming a feared cartel hitman. All right, folks, we've come to the end of our journey into the dark heart of the cartels. We've seen the toll it takes and the lives it destroys, but the question remains, what can we do about it? How can we break this cycle of violence and despair? I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me how you think we can make a difference. And if this video opened your eyes, if it made you think, then hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And if you want to stay up to date on this fight, then feel free to subscribe and never miss another video again. Until next time, stay safe.